Hey, Claudia,
Hey, John.
how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
I'm holding up. This has been a it's been a wild ride so far. 5 days in, so um, I'd love for you to share with everyone your knowledge of Demetrius DuBose, your experiences with Demo.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be part of this project with you guys. You guys have been doing a tremendous job by rehumanizing Demetrius DuBose and bringing light to who he really was. So thank you very much. I've met Demo in late 95, early 96 when I was living in Park City, Utah. He came up with Al Jans and Gavin Johnson, common friends of ours, for a ski trip. And he was really a beautiful presence, a smile that filled every single room that he walked into. And we immediately bond. There was a bond that was like right away. On the second day that he was there, all the crew went up to the mountains. Everybody was going snowboarding. I was fresh on snow, didn't know how to snowboard, didn't know how to ski, but really wanted to learn how to ski. And Demo, as the contrary to everybody else in the group, said, "Hey, I'm gonna go skiing. Why don't I take you up to the mountains with me?" And I said, "You would?" And then he said, 100%. So at that point, coming from Brazil, where I was born and raised, I had no clue or idea of what a football player meant on the culture of the United States. So to me, he was just another guy, and lovingly so, a black guy, because I haven't seen many BIPOC in Del Mar or around that area. So he took me up to the mountains. I ate it. He never let me give up. He took me to the gnarliest diamond black run in the mountain and said, "You can do this." And I cried and I screamed and I cried. And he said, "If you call the ski patrol, I'll never talk to you again, sister woman." That's how he called me, like from day two. "Sister woman, if you call the snow patrol, we'll never talk again." And it was going like, oh my God. So he took his time. We made that run in about an hour and 15 minutes because I was so scared. But he stood by me the whole entire time. And from that point on, we became really close friends. And we moved back to San Diego and we lived in this house on a bluff in Locadia and Demo. 2 weeks into the time that we moved back to Del Mar, he moved into that house because that house belonged to a guy named Bob Kickner, who was really good friends with John Lynch. They went to high school together. So John Lynch introduced Demetrius to Bob Kickner, and he was renting his condo in Del Mar at the time.
So, John, you're talking about John Lynch, who was Demo's roomie in
Teammate.
Tampa
Mm-hmm.
Road,
Yes,
one of his best friends, who gave his eulogy at his service, and
correct.
who is the president of the San Francisco 49ers.
Precisely.
Okay.
John
Hall
Lynch
of Fame.
Sr. Junior. I'm
Mhm.
sorry. Pardon me. So he made a connection. We were then roommates, and Dimo and I had a very open relationship. We talked about a lot of things. I was a very insecure person at the time. My nowadays husband and I had eloped in Utah, never told anyone. We didn't know if it was going to work out or not. So it was a secret. Demo knew it. But uh, the phone at our home wouldn't stop ringing every day. Lots of like my husband, Brad Kennedy, was a chick magnet at the time. And Demo and I, because we weren't born and raised in Del Mar, we felt like we never really quite belonged all the way, you know? So
What
we
culture is Del Mar? Why did you not feel like you really belonged? Can you describe a little bit
So,
what that's
of course, as everywhere else, I believe, John, and I came to learn this, there's a lot of biases that impede people's judgments and actions in life. And Del Mar is known different than any other places on earth. There's a huge clique, and it's very much based on, did you grow up in Del Mar? Did you go to Torrey Pines High School? Who do you know? And it's beautiful. Everybody know there's a lot of overlapping of surf culture and volleyball culture, and you name it, all. It's an array of cultures that overlap, but there's this really tight fabric that unites the culture of Del Mar. It's, we didn't belong. We were never there. We were not Torrey Pines alone. And we never, well, I mean, we were welcome, warmly welcome, but at the end of the day, we didn't feel like we belonged. So it was, again, another bond. And he was so different. He was highly educated. He was highly cultured. I had traveled the world already. I loved music. I had traveled from Brazil to the United States with 234 CDs in my luggage. And he and I sat all day long on the floor and listened to music and, you know, commiserated together. Demetrius would extenuate himself every day in the morning, exert himself. I would come out to go to work, and he had ran 5 times a set of stairs that led from the house to the beach 5 times, 125 steps. And he would just run and run and run, and then he would go down to the beach and do his sprints, and then he would come up beat up and like legs cramping, and he would put his legs up in the air and he would say, make me breakfast. And like, we just had a really, really cool friendship. I didn't know where my marriage, like situation was gonna go. Like, I was telling him that I wanted to have kids. I was ready. It was on my early 30s. He would say, don't ever give up on things that you want to do. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I want to have kids too. He would say, I want to find the woman of my life, and I want to have 5 kids. I'm going to have 3 boys and 2 girls.
Really? That's what he said.
But then at times when we were talking about that as well, he would say, I don't know. I'm not quite sure if I will be a good dad, because I don't really have a strong figure of a father. I have people in my family. We have a very close and knitted family with lots of cousins and aunties and so forth. My mom was the one who truly raised me. So would I be a good dad? So we had like deep conversations about families and relationships all the time. And there was that question in his mind. So we'll move forward. And
Let's just stop there for a second, Claudia.
Sure.
And I want to backtrack a little bit and ask you to share what Demetrius told you about his family, like what he told you about his dad, his mom, his cousins and uncle, like what you knew of Demo's upbringing and his family.
So even though we had an open relationship, he was somewhat private about his relationship with his dad. He never really want to talk too much about it. He just had mentioned that he was absentee as he grew up, and that his mom was little but mighty. That's how he used to call her. My mom is a firecracker. She will tell you how it is all the time. I think that he felt like he owned to her a lot of things that he became in his life as well. There was this huge pressure on his shoulders all the time to be someone, to perform, to never let people down. That's how I felt. I felt as though he would transpire that to his family, even though they're really close and very supportive of one another and each other. He was Big D, and Big D had a role in everyone's lives, and he felt like he couldn't let anyone down. So there were days that were really heavy on him, I think.
Well, and why is that? What was happening circumstantially?
I feel as though that the demo that I knew was not necessarily the demo that everybody knew. So he would walk out there and be in public, and he would have like this almost like a stoic face on him sometimes, and he wouldn't smile very much. And then all of a sudden he would crack and bring that big smile. You know what I mean? But he wasn't necessarily super open all the time with everyone. He was not very light. He had
He was not very light, like he was a little heavy. Is that what you're saying?
a little heavy because I feel like he needed to represent something that people expected of him at all times. You know, he was constantly approached by people asking him, "Can you get me tickets to go here? Can you put me in? Can you get me in into this game? Can you this? Can you? Should we go travel and party together here?" Like, and he was always like, I, I can see what I can do, you know? And I think on the flip side, what I brought to our relationship is that I didn't care for any of that. I had connections with beach volleyball, which was something that he was truly developing and interested in. And he would ask me.
So he's still in the NFL at this point, right? He's still playing.
Yes,
right?
he was transitioning out of Tampa into New York.
Yeah. Okay.
If my timeline is not mistaken.
No, you're right.
And then all of a sudden, so he went off. I went on with my life. We stayed friends, and he would come to 23rd Street. So 26th Street in Del Mar is all the beach volleyball crowd. 23rd Street is all the surf skate, artsy people, and they overlap a bit. But he would come more often to 23rd than he would be on 26th. And you go to Moonlight Beach in Encinitas, which is way more laid back and more beach volleyball oriented than anywhere else. So, in going up to New York, he got dismissed, and then all of a sudden I found him.
Released in the NFL, Claudia. It's not like school. You get cut, released.
I know, but I'm trying to be very, very. I'm trying to be gentle.
Okay, so no, don't be. So because it wasn't gentle for him. And what difference did you notice in Demo from the guy who was going to New York and then the guy that came back from New York?
He was a tad disoriented. He was super uber sad. He was in a not very happy place of his life. He was truly disoriented. He had a look that was lost in his face, and he was like, "What am I going to do with my life?" And then it's almost like he snapped it. So he was staying with Jeff Baldwin at Jeff's teeny incy little shoebox house that he had, and Demo was there as long as he could, and then I don't quite know where did he phase out of Jeff Baldwin's house. I think he spent actually some time with my father-in-law at the time in Del Mar because they loved each other as well. But he was trying to reinvent himself. He was saying, I think he had 2 weeks, almost like a month of very introspective suffering, like tremendous suffering and disoriented. And then he said, "I'm going to
tell us a little." Stop right there.
Okay.
I want to hear about what that disorientation and sadness, what that actually looked like, specifically behavioral manifestations of it and anything that was said. Give us some really insight into that.
Right. So the pre-cut demo was very structured and there was high discipline on his daily basis. He would exercise, eat well, sleep as much as he could, relax, blah, blah, blah. Like the athlete demo. Coming back, he was not knowing what to do. He wanted to learn how to surf. He wanted to learn how to skateboard. He wanted to learn how to play beach volleyball. So he was reaching all over the place and not necessarily going anywhere, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And there were days that we would come in touch and then he would just be sad. He would just be quiet and almost like somber. Not my demo, not my big smile demo, not my big hug demo, not my sister woman demo. Just like, "Hey, what's up, Claudia? I might go surfing later, but I don't know. I might just stay here. I need to take a nap, kind of a deal. So he
Did
was,
you see any drug use?
I never witnessed any, quite frankly.
Mhm.
Never. We socially drink together. I've seen him perhaps once or twice, a little bit sauced when we were down in Mexico, where everybody was as well. You know, it was
Yeah.
just like the standard procedure for everybody. We were having fun and we were younger.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing. But I know I hadn't, he never, I think he protected our relationship a little bit in those terms. He never really did drugs in front of me. He never brought drugs inside my house. I lived in a place where I was alone because BK, my husband, was deployed in Bosnia and Albania for 14 months. So I lived for a full year prior to Dimo passing or being killed, I should say, by myself. And he knew where the key was. And I would come home and I would find him either sleeping on my couch or in my bed because he always loved to sleep on my bed. I have found him numerous times sleeping in my bed just because he loved it. And
And
that
what
was a
and so what happens then on the last night of his life when you hear that he was asleep in his neighbor's bed? I
Thank
mean,
you
does
for
that,
asking that because
yeah.
to me that was the biggest bullshit I ever heard because I would find that man sleeping in my bed almost 2 or 3 times a week. And even BK knew it. And he would just say, he'd be like, I like your bed because your sheets smell better than mine. You know, you do laundry because it was true. You know, like we would talk about everything. We would talk about fashion, perfume, cologne, fragrances. He would say, the way your sheets smell and your pillow smell, it smells better than mine. So I like to sleep in your bed. And it was just a given, you know. They show photos that Jimo and he's always on top of my bed with
Like,
like hugging my girlfriends, you know, like making jokes, whatever. So that was the phase of him that he wasn't really being himself. I remember once he packed up his little U-Haul and took off to Seattle, and I think he turned around in 2 weeks and came back, and he was just as sad as when he got cut from New York, you
so,
know.
so you feel like he was just the same just kind of figure trying to find stuff out, but kind of lost in the clouds. Is that, or lost in the swamp? Is that
Trying
how?
to trying to figure out where did he belong next? What
Oh,
was he next to
what were his relationships? You know, the people that you knew him, like what was happening with John Lynch? And you know, I shared a deposition with you from a gentleman that you know, describing, and this is why I'm really asking about the drugs, because you know the drugs were used after Demo was slaughtered. They were used, you know, any incident he had was used to kind of reconstruct this narrative of what happened on that last night and why they had to shoot him 13 times. So, and then in the civil case, there's a deposition from Big Rich, and it was kind of, it contradicts a lot of things that were said, you know, at a certain point of Demo's life, really the last few months. So when he came back from the U-Haul, we're talking a few months from when he was executed, right? I mean, that was, are we talking the same, right? I mean, timeline here?
I believe he was moving back to Seattle.
Okay, so what I'm asking is this. He comes back and, you know, when was the last time you saw him alive?
I want to say so July of 99. I want to say it was perhaps April or March.
Okay, and what was he like in April or March?
He was partying a little bit more than he used to. He was hanging out with a lot of people down south and downtown and still playing volleyball phenomenally. I never seen the demo that people have described on those depositions. I never seen the demo that needed an intervention, as it was mentioned. I, I, I never seen that transient that was described with demo. I never seen that. I
Well,
never, I
I
never.
mean, slept on the beach one night, but he might have slept on the beach many nights, and that was even when he was living in Del Mar and an NFL player, right?
Listen,
Accurate.
he and I slept under the stars in Arcadia many nights. It was just who he was.
So is it fair from your perspective, you read, okay, let's just talk about the deposition that you read, okay? And let's go over it a little bit, and let's be really specific about it, okay? Big Rich says that he sees Demo about a month before he dies, or 1 month or two before he dies, says that he looks emaciated and homeless, and he's chain smoking cigarettes, and he's really thin and doesn't look well. He's almost looks like he's about to beg for money. Is that anything you had ever heard or seen?
I can picture that. I can picture that. I haven't seen it. No, I can't. I mean, I was baffled by what I read because I can't, no, I can't, no. Just I'm not even going to justify what I'm trying to say here. No, period. No.
So how do you interpret a deposition like that? Why is it, first of all, just tell me what you think of it. Like, what do you think about that deposition and why is it there?
I don't understand why is it there. It was never requested. It was, I believe that Big Rich volunteered to come in. I believe that he has a lot of connections with the police department and personnel, law enforcement of San Diego. I think it's a fine line of his friendship that he had with Demetrius and the broad friendship that he has with the law enforcement in San Diego. It's where he has worked his entire life. He has been a bouncer and security guard many years of his life. And I don't know why did he feel the need to volunteer all those things that he said, because those are not who Demetrius was. So why make that the point of highlight of his deposition? It's something that baffles me. I don't understand. I mean, I don't dislike Big Rich. I perhaps now I do a little bit, but I never have in the past. He has always been a very nice individual, so I don't understand why. Why was he trying to be part of the highlights of the story as well? Why is he putting himself out there if he was never requested to come in? Was he friends with Demetrius? I think he was. I'm gonna say super from the bottom of my heart, I think he was part of Demetrius' entourage.
Okay.
Was he friends with Demetrius? No, I think Demetrius was surrounded by a lot of satellite people who wanted to be Demetrius, who wanted to be a little bit of Demetrius. I think there was a lot of people who were envious of what Demetrius represented.
Okay. And all right. So
it makes any sense.
What did you know about Demetrius's love life? I haven't ever, a lot of people don't really talk about it. I know, a little bit about his background, but in California specifically, what was he going through with that?
I don't know anything about college. You know more than I do. I know Demo was absolutely in love with a close friend of mine, and it was super sweet because he didn't know how to approach her. She was super smart and beautiful as well, and traveled and cultured, and she has a lot for fashion. They would sit and talk about fashion all day long. They even talked about opening a store together at some point. They had brainstorming ideas about fashion. He was insecure. He didn't know how to approach her. She was teeny, super. He and I had a code for her. She is super petite, and we used to call her Mignon. So he would ask me, he would come to the beach and say, "Where's Mignon?" I'm like, "She's out there." She starts. She boogie boards, and like, "She's out in the water. Why don't you go out there?" And then he would. I think that's what kind of like gave him an incentive to learn to surf as well and belong on that crowd. But he would go like, "Is Mignon here?" So sweet. And then he never really approached her on like, or maybe he asked her once, "Can I take you on the date?" But he was very tentative and very timid and there was a lot of courting going on. He was courting her a lot and didn't go anywhere. And then through one of the beach volleyball tournaments, he came across Debbie Black, and she is a stud. She was a stud back then, a phenomenal uh, beach volleyball player, and just as athletic as he was. And it was just like magnet, like they just like pulled towards each other. And she, you know, they fell in love. They dated for a while, and then I think she'll be able to provide you with more details than I ever could about their relationship, because I was never really close in that moment with them. But they broke up. I think she decided he was not the guy for her. And I think I don't know, she might have feelings for other people in our group as well. And he got super, super heartbroken by that, because I think he really, really saw her as one to one, the same level, you know.
Do you know why? So that's one version of heartbreak, because I know we've talked more in the past about his heartbreak, his heartbreaks. Do you know anything about why, like at the time, do you know the reason why he packed up his U-Haul and sold everything in Del Mar? Did you know why it happened then?
So I've heard speculations. I do not know. I've heard so because we had such a friendship that was never revolving about finances and money, that didn't represent anything to me. I think he knew that. He never really discussed any of that side of his life with me. But I do hear about his agent maybe not using his money wisely and making him kind of destitute of his everything that he perhaps acquired and successfully so saved. And I don't know, then there's like stories of him going up to be with his mom, Mrs. DuBose, whom I dearly love, and her perhaps not being,
You know,
I don't know. I don't know if she wanted him there at that point.
okay. Well, and maybe he didn't want to be there. We don't know.
Yeah,
right?
we don't know. So those are always speculations, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I personally
Okay.
don't know.
Okay. So let's just fast forward now to July 24th. What happened how'd you find out about his death, and how does it sit with you now?
I don't know if it doesn't sit with me. It's impossible to sit with me. Does it sit with you? It haunts me every day. It was awful. I was working at I was working in the garment industry. We had a huge inventory overnight. It was a shift overnight. I was there in the warehouse with my team. I manage a team of 5 people, and I felt as though it was not fair for them to work overnight if I wasn't there, so I did. And then people would start showing up for the morning shift. And this woman who knew Demo really well because they play beach volleyball together, she walked in panicking and screaming and crying, saying Demo was killed. Demo was killed by the police last night. And I felt like the floor was opening underneath my feet. I I just lost it. I just lost it. And within that company, there were so many people really well connected with law enforcement as well. So I ran to this one of the owners and said, you need to help me. You need to find out what is happening. So I was home alone still because my husband was gone, and to me, it's a blur, because going back to that day was hell. It was hell. I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe. I could not. I was walking aimless. I couldn't drive. Someone had to drive me home. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't eat. I couldn't drink. I couldn't understand why that was happening. And because I haven't seen him in a few months, I couldn't understand why had he not reached out for a word? Why had he not, or worse than that, how come our entire community have not seen the signs of him going through stress and distress? And how come we didn't collectively were able to do something about it? So I started questioning about friendship and unity and cohesiveness and thoughts and all of that. Why do we call each other as friends if in fact we are not there for one another? And then if you even forward a little bit in the days that I would hear the people were marching in San Diego downtown, and I didn't even know how to get to these people or how do I would like to be part of it, but then I wasn't. None of us were. None of us in our community of Del Mar was there, as in, and why weren't we? So no, I can't live with that up to these days. I can't, because I'm ridden with guilt.
So
In so many levels, I'm ridden
what,
with guilt for not being a better friend to him, for not understanding. I claimed that I had a good friendship with him, but then I couldn't see it. Like the last time that he crashed on my couch, how come I didn't see it, that he might be going through the stress and suffering, you know?
all right. So what would you say to him right now?
I think it's PG-13. I don't know if I can.
No, you can say no, it's nothing. It's whatever you want to say to him, and
Okay.
be 100.
I would say, I love you and miss you so much, motherfucker. And I just want you to be here, because there's so many days in my life, John, that I look at my kids growing up and I said, Demo would have been so proud of my girls, you know? Demo would have been so stoked to see what my kids are doing nowadays. You know, I would have been so proud of his kids as well. So I miss him and I love him, and he's with me at all the time, because I feel it. He is. And yeah, he's here. So I think I find a little bit of solace just to find his spirit nearby. But I love and miss him tremendously.
What did the name Demetrius DuBose, what does it mean to you, Claudia?
Great things. Go for more. Don't look back. Remember where you come from. Stick with your roots. It is what it is.
Say one last thing, whatever you want it to be.
May your life always be with all the ones you love. And may your legacy be of love and education for the ignorant people in this life.
I think you'd like that. Claudia, thanks so much.
Okay.
Talk to you later.